Welcome back to 3D Dialogue. The division between Shia and Sunni Muslims dates back to the death of the Prophet Muhammad, when the question of leadership arose amongst the Muslim empire. And although these two main subgroups within Islam share the most fundamental Islamic beliefs, this initial question of political leadership affected some aspects of spiritual life and now differ between the two groups. Joining me in studio today to discuss the historical and present-day differences between Sunni and Shia Muslims is Imam Hamid Slimi, who is of the Sunni Muslim background from the International Muslims Organization, and Imam Saeed Muhammad Rizvi, who is of Shia background from the Jafari Islamic Center here in Toronto. Thank you very much for both of you in joining us today.
Okay.
Now, why don't we start, I guess, with the historical origins of the difference. And I would ask either of you perhaps to describe this difference and why this split came about.
If I can reverse the process, start with the common issues,
Okay.
and then that's where we'll see
And then
the
get to the
difference
differences.
start. I think both groups, the Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims, share in the core beliefs of the faith. When we talk about the concept of one God, the concept of Prophet Muhammad as the last and the final prophet of God on this earth. When we talk about the Quran and the textual integrity of the book. When we talk about the concept of angels and the day of judgment, and even the most basic practice that we have, the prayers and the fasting and the charity and the pilgrimage, are all commonly, believed by both groups. There are differences in how some of these practices are done, but that does not prevent us from doing things together. The question of division, yes, starts on the question of succession to Prophet Muhammad. And that's where we see the divide happened between the Shias and the Sunnis.
Now, this particular divide, am I correct in assuming that it was initially political? And as you say, there is so much commonality between the two.
Yes, indeed, it's political, as Imam said. Initially, it wasn't an issue of dogma. Just because, probably in this show, you may want to just explain to the viewers that it's not as it is between Catholic and Protestants.
Right.
As a matter of fact, we belong to one council of imams, and we do most of the things together. We have the same book, which is the Quran. We follow the same man, the same Prophet, Muhammad, peace be upon him. We love the family of the Prophet, Muhammad, peace be upon him. We have many things in common. It's not as you may think of other religions. It's the same religion.
The differences are actually quite small.
Well, because Islam deals with all aspects of life, and as comparative with religions would like to call it, an orthoprax religion rather than orthodox, which means deals with things that you do in life, including politics. How do you govern the society? So there were initially some differences. Historically, they developed, but the perception from outside is that it's a major difference, but it's not indeed. Muslims, whether Sunni and Shia, they have 5 pillars of Islam. They have many things that bind them together rather than divide them.
Well, and you mentioned that both, let's say, practice in the pilgrimage to Mecca. Are there other aspects with regard to pilgrimages or shrines that are distinct? Are there, for example, Shia shrines or Sunni shrines that are separate and not shared?
I think from the Shia point of view, since we talk about the leadership after the Prophet, I think the distinction that the Shias have is that we give more importance to the family of the Prophet, and we believe that the leadership should have been in the line of the Prophet's family. And of course, because of with that, historically events have happened where the Shia Imams from the family of the Prophets, they lived in Arabia, in Iraq, and so the places where they died or they were killed, we have the shrines where the Shia Muslims also go there, part of their pilgrimage in the English sense of the word, yes. Although we don't call it Hajj. Hajj is only for Mecca.
Right.
It's ziyarah, visitation to the shrine of the Prophet in Medina, as well as the Imams in Medina and cities in Iraq, and also one of the cities in Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious also, I mean, obviously we are focusing on the similarities, but in terms of the differences, is there a geographic difference in terms of the way that Sunni and Shia Muslims have settled? And is there even an ethnic difference? Or are they really of the same people, just having a different approach to how they govern society?
Well, basically, the Shia, if I may, focused mainly, as Imam said, in the areas where the Imams lived and had their progeny, and that would be Iraq and Iran, and but that's not necessarily, they're everywhere. And
right.
Based on, many studies, they're in almost every part of the world. The Sunnis, on the other hand, they are everywhere from east to west. But back to the differences, as you said, it's political differences. We Sunnis believe that any Muslim can lead, provided has the quality of trustworthiness and strength of intellect and physical strength and a few other aspects of strength. However, still the family of the Prophet is honored, and but indeed the Shia see the authority has been transferred from the Prophet into his family, and the emphasis now is more of what brings us together, and this is one of the aspects. The other aspects that, of course, could be sources is the Quran is the same, but the interpretations
could be different.
Could be different. But so in the Sunni school, anyone who reaches a level of scholarship recognized by the Ummah, for the nation, the Muslims. So it's not necessarily from the family of the Prophet.
Right.
Could be anyone from any, as a matter of fact.
Who has sort of achieved that level of scholarship.
Yeah, well, the interpretations or the hadiths or the sayings of the Prophets were compiled actually by, most of them, these 6 books, were compiled by people who were not Arabs, who were actually from what you call today Europe or Central Asia, countries like Uzbekistan and this Bukhari, Tirmidhi, all these scholars came into Islam and they compiled the hadith and they did a good job. There are those who are Arabs, but that's a source of hadith, which is the interpretation of the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet.
So it's almost literally a non-ethnic approach. Now, unfortunately, we have to take a break, but we'll return to this discussion in a moment. I'm speaking with Imam Hamid Slimi from the International Muslims Organization and Imam Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi from the Jafari Islamic Center here in Toronto. We'll be back with more on this discussion after this short break. You're watching 3D Dialogue. Welcome back to 3D Dialogue. I'm Jesse Hirsch, and I'm in studio today with Imam Hamid Slimi from the International Muslims Organization and Imam Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi from the Jafari Islamic Center here in Toronto. Now, before the break, we were talking a little bit about some of the sort of ethnic and geographic differences between Sunni and Shia Islam. And Imam, you wanted to elaborate a little bit on
I just wanted to make the viewer understand it clearly that it's not really an ethnic divide. It's you can see Shias and Sunnis in all ethnic backgrounds, all the way, let's say, from India to Pakistan to Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, and even Lebanon.
It's really quite a large area. So,
and historically, the communities have shifted around. There was a time when there were many Shias in Egypt, for example. It was actually ruled by the Fatimid caliphates. And so it's really not an ethnic division. Of course, the issues that people see in the screen these days, events from Iraq, even there you will see it's not really an ethnic issue, and neither is it a religious or sectarian issue. It's more a political issue. If you have a majority or a minority, suppressing the other group, whether they are Shia or Sunni, the one who is oppressed is going to react. And so, unfortunately, we have the situation in Iraq where you have this Saddam's regime who does not necessarily represent the Sunni Muslims, although he happened to be from that group. But it wasn't a sectarian issue, and you had a substantial majority of the Shias there oppressed by Saddam's regime.
And not allowed to practice their religion.
Yes,
or to
yes,
observe
there were
their
all
shrines.
even restrictions in what they could do politically or religiously. And so those tensions, it's more a political issue of being oppressed that you see coming out now. And so it's not necessarily that the Sunnis are against the Shias or the Shias are against the Sunnis. Religiously, we cannot look at things in that way.
Well, and it is, I would say, a tragedy that our mainstream media continues to articulate the conflict in Iraq as being religious. And perhaps it's, the Americans who certainly should take some responsibility for the political environment that's there, that rather than they accept responsibility, they seem to point the finger at both Sunni and Shia Muslims as being responsible. Yet here you are, both of you in Toronto, certainly your friends before you came on this show, and
yes.
Sunni and Shia Muslims all around the world regularly work together. Can you perhaps describe or elaborate a bit more on that level of cooperation?
Well, you said it well. The politicians actually, when they mess it up, they like to finger point.
They like to blame
others.
someone else.
Because, they have a high level of responsibility. And when we say responsibility, meaning you have to respond to questions. And unfortunately, it's a failure after failure. And then when you come and you're faced with your people or whoever is asking you, then you start blaming. Iraq is not a problem of Shia and Sunni. They suffered from the injustice, both Sunnis and Shias suffered from the injustice of a totalitarian regime, Saddam Hussein, who was supported by the West, by Americans. It's a regime that was strengthened by the West. It was the chemical weapons that were against the Kurds were brought from the West. So let's read the history. Let's not just follow the paper and just, assume this is how it is. It's not like that. Any truth you want to deal with, you have to go to the background. Any conflict in the world. And this is how you deal with the issue. It's not, the Iraqi people are not suffering from a sectarian division. They're suffering from injustice. They're suffering from occupation. They're suffering from many things.
Well, and as you mentioned, when you go into the background, when you go into history, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a history of Sunni and Shia really cooperating and getting along.
Well, I think you will see from a historical perspective, in majority of places and majority of time, the Shias and Sunnis have coexisted peacefully. There have been no problems. All these things we see are really innovations and new things which were not part of our religious values at all.
Now,
you take the example of a mosque. Technically, and I'm sure the Imam would agree, no mosque can be classified as a Shia or a Sunni.
Right.
It's a place of worship.
Right.
Even if it's run, the custodians are Sunnis, they cannot prevent a Shia from praying there. Neither a mosque run by the Shias can they prevent a Sunni from praying there. And so, on a religious basis, there is absolutely no room for this kind of violence that we see.
Now, unfortunately, we are running out of time, but I did quickly want to throw to you, really, what can be done? I mean, what can we do to both educate the West as to really the true commonalities between Sunni and Shia Islam, but what can be done in terms of Iraq, of really creating a better environment for what are oppressed peoples, both Sunni and Shia, to be able to have their religious freedom?
You see, this card, as I said, of differences between Shia and Sunni, and within the Sunni, different groups, and within the Shia, they won't divide in different groups. Within the Arabs, there are the Christians and the Muslims, and then you come ethnicity, you divide between the Arabs and the Kurds or Turkmens. There are different ethnicities. They always try to use one of these cards, and it's failing.
Right.
What could be done, and I mean, we can use the platform of your show and say, from this platform, justice is one, is not two. Justice has no color, justice has no size. Right. Justice is something that in everyone's heart and mind.
Justice is for everybody.
Treat
literally.
others like to be treated. This is taught by the Quran, by the Bible, by the Old Testament, New Testament. Every religion teaches the same thing. It summarizes all the teachings. You treat others as you like to be treated. No country like to be occupied. But the card of ethnicity or secularism, all this is, you know what it is.
Well, and it's abused. And perhaps, unfortunately, we are out of time. But if only the President of the United States would think in such a way as to treat others as he would like to be treated, certainly the world would be in a much better condition than it is now.
Surely.
Thank you, both of you, for joining us today.
You're welcome.
That was Imam Hamid Slimi from the International Muslims Organization and Saeed Mohammed Rizvi, an imam at the Jafari Islamic Center. Next up, a discussion about Druidism, right after the break. You're watching 3D.